when I play Elder Scrolls Online, I often will just kind of log in and gather random things, do a little bit of farming, and sell my random items in the guild stores, and then probably log off. I don't spend a lot of time necessarily doing anything else, actually. It's just a pretty fun, chill game, and I really like the fact that I can play the game casually. If I wanted to do a quest, I could do a quest. If I wanted to just log in and run around, I can do that. It's got a pretty pleasant community, all things considered, and there's not any real sense of obligation if you don't want it to really do anything in particular. That's true, some people will try to min-max their characters, some people will have objectives that they're trying to grind for, and anytime you go down that rabbit hole, you can wind up spending a lot of time in a game. But if you just want to be casual, there's absolutely no reason why you can't just hang out in the game and have no real objectives at all. You just spend time casually, and maybe you spend a few minutes a day or something like that, and there's no need to do any more than that. I like that. But the purpose of today's talk is the value of money, and specifically I'm referring to MMOs, because there's always a virtual currency in any game you play. And what's interesting about this is some of those currencies are more realistic than others. For example, if you played Albion Online or EVE Online, the currencies are very realistic, and the economies in those games are very realistic. So you have supply and demand, you have items that break in combat, ships get destroyed in Albion, in EVE Online. Weapons and armor gets destroyed and changes hands in Albion Online, and so there's always this need to find more resources and craft new items, sell those items, and those realistic supply and demand elements in the economy make those games have really cool economy elements. So I really enjoy what those games have to offer. But the reality is I don't really enjoy playing the games, because the reality is that the player base winds up being very toxic because you can't trust anyone. It's all about fighting other players all the time. There's not really any story other than existing in this world of perpetual conflict and chaos. So as fun as a supply and demand economy might be, who really wants to permanently roleplay in a sort of a gang violence simulator kind of a situation where you feel like currency in the game has a lot of value because you need it to do the things you have to do to play the game, to get new weapons or new armor or something like that. But there's not really any sense of having anything else to do with your money. Like, there's not really a housing scene per se, where you collect different furnishings and things. Like Albion Online kind of has that, but it's so basic. It's not really like you would be, buying a bunch of cool different furnishings just to do a cosmetic build. Like, that's not really housing in Albion Online. EVE Online, you could have a cool spaceship, but you can't really walk around in a spaceship. It's not like you have a home base where you can build up cool things and do amazing stuff with your money. So you wind up just spending all your money on combat gear, and that's cool, but it's obnoxious after a while, because you start to feel like, well, what am I even grinding for, other than grinding for the opportunity to grind even more? I'm trying to get a higher level so that I can do more, but in the end, the only thing that I'm going to get out of being a stronger player is being able to maybe encounter stronger enemies. You know, and in life, it's kind of like this too. If you think about people that have high-powered careers, or they really chase a lot of personal progression in getting promotions, or maybe trying to level up their life in some other way. You know, you find people who are always finding new ways to make more money, to have more money coming in, or to have grown their assets. And yet those people don't enjoy the money they have because they view making more money as the only goal which they have for their money. Like, the purpose of money is to get more money. But then what's the point of it? If the goal is just to make the number go higher, at some point you say, well, isn't the point of money supposed to be so that I could enjoy my life more? And if there's nothing out there that you really enjoy, you don't have any hobbies, you don't have any personal interests, you don't just have fun for the sake of having fun, you always are looking for ways to get ahead, but you don't really have any destination, then competition is the only objective that you have. And that becomes empty after a while, kind of like the game, which has a really cool economy system, but the culture of the players is really toxic because all there is in the game is competition, and oftentimes it's uneven competition. People don't come together in a positive way naturally if they are always trying to somehow get ahead at each other's expense. And money stops feeling special if you don't have anything non-essential to spend it on. A job feels less special if you are so absorbed in the job that you don't have any personal life. You don't have anything that you just do for your own personal enjoyment. And you grind and you grind and you grind, and you're trying to work up, you're trying to get more money, but you don't really have any personality outside of trying to get more money, trying to level up. There's a lot of people that do that, trying to level up their jobs, trying to level up their life, trying to outpace their neighbors, whatever it might be. And then life gets frustrating because there's not any real objective other than just trying to level up. It's like getting to the pot of gold at the base of the rainbow, and there's not really any way to reach it because it's just this never-ending journey to try to get there. And so I think there's a lot more fun to be had probably in maybe things that aren't as realistic, or things that don't take themselves as seriously, but they give you a lot of freedom to maybe express yourself or to just have fun along the way. For example, Elder Scrolls Online, like I was saying, it's not really got the most realistic economy per se. You can buy and sell things between yourself and other players, but it's not got a extremely realistic supply and demand economy like Eve or Albion, as I was describing those games. But you've got the pleasant community, you've got the theme parky elements of quests you can do just for fun. You can immerse yourself in the world more. You can do things with the currency that you have, all sorts of things, which are kind of like real world ways that you probably would spend money. You can buy stuff that just looks cool. You can decorate houses. You can just try to get money so that you can give it to other players so that maybe they could buy things that they would enjoy in the game with that currency. So in a sense, even though maybe the economy isn't as realistic in an intrinsic way, the game environment as an MMO is more realistic in the sense that there's actually things to do. And another thing that I thought was kind of interesting is how I've often studied different MMOs and kind of thought, well, you know, which one has the best economy and which one has the best way of buying and selling things and currency system and all of that kind of stuff. And somewhere along in all of that, I've also thought about how my goodness, I've sort of lost my train of thought right in the middle of it. It was right there. I was going to say something, and then I forgot. I'll probably come back to me in a minute. But no, I always hate that when that happens. You have something on the tip of your tongue, you're getting ready to say it, and then the thought just kind of strolls right out of your mind no sooner than you begin. Oh, I got it. So now here's the thing. So the economy of a game might not be super realistic, right? Like there's certain things about it that's not, you know, it's not really supply and demand driven, or some aspect of the economy isn't as realistic as maybe another game. But then I think about my actual experience in the game, and I've realized you don't really need things to be super realistic. Sometimes there's no difference between something that is superficial and not really realistic and something that is simulated with a lot of depth, because you as a player aren't really particularly benefiting from the depth of simulation. It's like Cities Skylines 2. I play that game, and people talk about depth of simulation because you have a city in the game, and all of the citizens living in the city are simulated. They have their jobs, they have their relationships, they have their needs and wants, and all sorts of things like that. And the game can get potentially bogged down, and it's a system resource demanding because there's so much simulation on the backside. The reality is, though, a lot of this stuff you really don't necessarily probably need to simulate fully. As cool as it is for every citizen in the city building game to have their own little virtual life, maybe on the backside some of those things could just be numbers. They could just be statistics. And you could sort of fake it up so that it looks like there's a bit more of a depth of simulation than there really is. Because the reality is that most people, when they're playing a game where you're simulating that you're building a city with hundreds of thousands of people living in it, they're not actually following one person's life. You're managing your virtual city in a macro kind of a way. And, you know, maybe in the application of an MMO, one game doesn't have a super realistic economy, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? Because you still have players buying and selling things from each other. And if I just want to log into the game and run around and grab some resources and sell them, does it really matter if one game has a more realistic economy than another? As long as it's possible to share things with other players and to be part of a world that's online and connected in that way, everything doesn't have to be super realistic. We could talk about combat difficulty too. I always think it's super cool if you have realistic combat, and one thing I've sort of criticized about Elder Scrolls Online is the level scaled world. Like, nothing is really all that difficult. It's all just kind of samey, which on the surface I could say I don't like that, but the reality is I also don't like it when I encounter a game where everything's super difficult and you want to just kind of level up or get through some content, and then suddenly you discover that it's going to take a whole bunch of hours for you to clear some basic content because you have to keep trying over and over again because the difficulty level is really, really hard. So maybe, maybe my goal as a player would be to have a kind of a Care Bear easy experience because I want it to be a casual experience. I also want it to feel realistic, but maybe I don't really actually want it to be super realistic because super realistic comes at a cost. If you get defeated in battle and you actually lose all of your gear on death and you have to go back and you have to grind for it for hours, you might not really want that experience. If realism means that other players are really cutthroat and they can, take each other's stuff and it creates the environment of a sort of a toxicity amongst players, then maybe a little bit more of a theme park environment is preferable, because it gets old if you actually are in a situation where it's supposed to be a game, but you have people that are, just really aggressive or they're unfriendly or something like that. So the point I'm getting at here is that sometimes there's a disparity between what we think we want and what we actually want. And you find you have a better experience when you actually just kind of stop saying, this is what I want. And you actually start saying, well, what am I getting the best experience of? And then you invest more time in the things that you actually enjoy, not in the things which maybe statistically you think, well, technically this is the best, so I should enjoy it. There's a lot of situations where maybe you would think that you're going to have a better time with something because technically it's better, but the reality is there's something else that would be a better fit for you. And if you just study how it makes you feel, what kind of an experience you have along the way, then you stop necessarily being so critical of things that aren't perfect, and you start finding cause to enjoy things that are just fundamentally good. And you realize a lot of things that you think are important don't really matter. And there's some things that you think are really good, but in practice, when you actually see the effects of those things, they're not really all that good. It's like, what if I said that I want to, we're going to break away from gaming. Let's say I said that I wanted to have a relationship with a woman who's really, really smart because I like intelligence. Well, that's great. And I'm not saying I'd want to be with somebody who's stupid, but you find somebody who's really, really smart, extremely smart, like a genius level, and what kind of a lifestyle does that person want to live? Quite possibly they're doing something that's demanding. They have that high-powered job. They have the career path that they're chasing. They are never content with where they're at because they're super smart and they're always looking around for something to reach for. So if I actually wanted to just be able to, chill out and enjoy life with somebody that's got reasonable expectations, then maybe I'm not looking for someone who's really, really smart, like an Einstein. Maybe I'm looking for somebody who's a little bit more down to earth, right? So like these are just examples of where, whether you're talking about life or you're talking about a game, there's so many things that we think, well, this is what I want. This is what's good. This is the standard of good. But then when you actually see it in practice, it's not as good for you as you might imagine. And then there's things that are maybe more ordinary, more of a compromise, more middle of the road, which you wind up actually saying, well, this is actually doing me more good than some of the things that I thought that I wanted. Maybe if there's a moral to this story, it would be that we should keep our keep our minds open to the fact that sometimes things that are best for us aren't the things we think that we want or need. And if you are open to that, then you don't have this one-track mentality where you're trying to have a good experience with something that's not actually capable of delivering a good experience. And there's a lot of times, I think, in relationships, in jobs, in so many different parts of our life where we have this feeling that something is meant to be. And then we try to make it work, and we keep on coming back to it. Maybe we start to have that sunk cost fallacy where you think, well, I put so much time and effort into trying to chase this or that, or I wanted it to work, that we keep on chasing it, keep on trying to make it work, and it just isn't really a good fit in our life. And for whatever reason, we don't want to let it go. And then that leads to a certain bitterness or frustration, because we have that circular sort of a feedback loop of sorts. When you keep on thinking, I'm trying to figure this out in my life, whatever it is, trying to figure out the answer, and there's the pros and the cons to everything, and you just can't quite figure it out. And usually that's because you are looking at the wrong thing. You're looking at maybe you're looking at some statistics instead of just being honest about what delivers good fruit in your life and what doesn't. And the truth is, if you're having a good experience with something, it's probably good for you. And if you're having a poor experience with something, then no matter how much you can put it on paper that it's good, it really probably isn't. And you'd be better off to just kind of let it go and say, things are what they appear to be, and not everything that is good in one way is good in every way. And just remember vanilla extract. We all like vanilla, right? Because vanilla is one of the most popular flavorings in the world. But go out there and try to enjoy some pure vanilla extract, and you'll find it's very bitter. It's not something you'd want to be eating. So, that's a good allegory of what I'm talking about. Sometimes you don't want good things in their purest form. You want them to be just a little bit filtered. Maybe you want to remind yourself not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. In any case, as you embark on your adventures, whether that's in life or in gaming, good luck to you. And as always, thank you for watching.